This is not peace, it is an armistice for 20 years. These words attributed to Ferdinand Foch, the supreme Allied commander during the First World War, would prove eerily true. During the signing of the Treaty of Versailles in 1919, which was engineered to avoid a second global conflict, Foch felt the Allies were being too lenient on the defeated Germans. When one considers that exactly 20 years later, just as he predicted, peace in Europe ended and the Second World War began, was he correct in his views? When Europe was busily brokering for peace, following the conclusion of the First World War, there were intense debates as to how this peace should look. One of these figures was Ferdinand Foch, who had been in the French military since the Franco-Prussian War. Foch believed that the Entente were entitled to any conditions they wanted, and given Germany's weak and unstable position, meant they would have no choice but to accept any terms presented to them. Following the trend from the Franco-Prussian War, where a defeated France were forced to pay reparations, Foch believed the French were entitled to the same in 1919. This wasn't particularly controversial and was seen as almost standard procedure in the aftermath of the Great War. Where Foch splintered from some of the other interested parties, however, was by arguing that, without permanent French control of the Rhineland, the reparations would be meaningless and would not prevent another conflict happening. He argued, if France has a firm hold of the Rhine, she may be at rest, for she can be sure of reparations and security. Without the Rhine, she has neither. The British and the Americans rejected this notion, however, fearing it would shift the balance of power too heavily for the French, but agreed to an Allied occupation of the area for 15 years. Foch deemed this a capitulation, a treason, and insufficient to protect France and her allies. We can see that Foch wasn't looking at the Rhineland as merely spoils of war, but as an essential deterrent alongside the reparations to ensure peace in Europe. In hindsight, we know that the reparations and poor economic conditions in Germany fostered an environment which allowed for the rise of Nazism. We also know that by the mid-1930s, Germany had become arguably the most economically powerful nation in Europe, as they arguably were prior to the First World War. So, it appears the severe reparations alone didn't serve their intended purpose. Therefore, was Foch correct in arguing that a permanent occupation of the Rhine was essential to prevent what he saw as the inevitable re-emergence of Germany? After all, it was a key industrial region for Germany and served as a natural border with France. Without the Rhineland, would it have been too difficult for Germany to rise again as it did? Well, that is difficult to answer. One mustn't ignore other factors which may have led to the Second World War, such as the United States not joining the League of Nations and the rise of the Stalinist regime in the Soviet Union. Whilst we won't cover those points today, they are worth considering when examining the interwar period. Foch died in 1929, before the advent of Nazi Germany and the subsequent outbreak of the Second World War, so he never got his "I told you so" moment. Whilst Foch did indeed predict a second European conflict with eerie accuracy, it remains to be seen whether his ideal peace treaty would have prevented this from happening. The interwar is a fascinating and complex period, meaning it is hard to pinpoint a single factor for causing the Second World War. What do you think? Was Foch right, or do you have other theories as to what caused the Second World War to happen? Thank you for joining us at Canned History. If you enjoyed the video and would like to see more, then like, comment and subscribe.